Welcome to the podcast that's dedicated to making you a faster cyclist, the Ask a Cycling Coach podcast presented by TrainerRoad. I'm Coach Jonathan Lee, and we have with us TrainerRoad and Cannondale's Amber Pierce.
Good morning, everybody.
We have Orange Sealed Specialized Alex Wild.
Heyo.
And our CEO, Nate Pearson.
Hello, everyone. Today, what we're going to do is start off with a 45-minute deep dive into Train Now. So just kidding. Last time it went a little long. We understand. Got some feedback. Some people are interested. Can't make everyone happy.
You made people just turn it off right there.
I know, exactly. Train Now is pretty popular, though, so maybe that one they do want to hear. But
yeah.
Here it is. Just open up and use it. There you go. That's all you need.
When we talk about adaptive training like that, I think that some people that haven't gotten into it yet but have signed up for the closed beta, it's almost like we're talking about they're starving and we're just like describing in detail this delicious meal and they can't have it. So, but it's coming.
How much fun you had going out last night when they didn't come?
Yes, exactly.
It was the most amazing time.
Yeah. I just love how exact Nate's numbers are. It's not like there's 1,000 people on it now. It's like there's 942.
Yeah. We just added another big batch yesterday. We're adding another batch today as well, which is exciting. We're accelerating that, and it's really cool. So, but I don't want to.
We have 1,123 now.
Yep, and I think that's actually going.
Point.
Yeah.
Another 300 today.
He's not watching stocks. He just has a little ticker with his
The AT beta.
live on beta.
Yeah, that's exactly. It's a company priority.
It is.
So it is a obsession.
It's not dissimilar from you, Alex, watching your live power instead of 3-second smooth power at all times. So you of all people to give Nate guff about specific numbers.
I at least let it round it to not a decimal.
Let's go straight into questions this week from Calvin. He says, I'm so thankful for TrainerRoad, and prior to using it this past off season, I was getting spit out the back of 4 or 5 races. After diligently following your mid-volume crit plan this offseason and watching tons of your incredible race analysis videos, those are on YouTube, by the way. There's a whole playlist of them you can watch right through.
By the way,
I've already won.
You can up your watts per, listen to what Amber and Pete say. I think in a flat crit, you can up it it's more like racing poorly. You lose a watt per kilo racing poorly. Do you think that's true, Amber?
Yeah, easily. Yeah.
Easily, right? So take whatever your weight is in kilograms and subtract that from your FTP. That's what racing is like if you don't do the things that Amber and Pete say.
For the record, we have no science to back up these numbers, but
this is very true.
To do a study. Yeah. I think you've all felt it though, right? You're in a race and you race poorly and you try to cover everything and do all the things that are wrong. And it is horrible. Horrible.
Oh yeah.
Sorry, John.
No. These are the sort of interjections we need. I really do think that if you watch the race analysis videos, you will improve your results. It'd be really hard not to. If you watched it and somehow did the total opposite, I guess sure. But otherwise, watch it. There's so many insights on all the different videos. And Calvin
see yourself
says
on the other end of tactics. You guys just posted a short track video of Keegan showing how to pass the field, and I'm just like, that guy looks familiar.
There we go. Yeah.
How to pass Alex Wild 101.
Calvin said that because of this, he's already won a 3-4 race and upgraded to Cat 3 after the first 3 races of his season. So way to go. That's awesome. He says, I've made these gains riding 5 to 6 days a week for a total of 10 to 12 hours with a mix of TrainerRoad and group rides. That's a really good way of doing things. It's following a low volume plan and still giving yourself the chance to be able to go out every week, execute in a group ride scenario, because then you get all that experience and it gives you kind of all the I'm missing the term here, but basically it gives all the life that you need to be able to express your fitness when you're on the bike. Mm-hmm. It's not purely mechanical. You need to build that intuition and everything else to be able to know when to do things smoothly and just do them intuitively. It does. It's a great way to do it. Yeah.
In a group with wheels. And also it's almost especially if you have Friday off and Saturday's the group ride, it feels fun. You got a little race. So your Tuesday, Thursday rides, you're building up, and then Friday's off and Saturday you do a little group ride and you feel it's like a dessert, right, for the week.
For sure.
Many
and
desserts.
Back to that watts per kilo thing. I remember when I first started working at Specialized, the Friday Worlds ride, I had the fitness. I would get dropped off that ride every time. And it's just because like I didn't know how to ride in a pace line. I didn't know where to sit. I didn't know like when to move over. I didn't realize like at the back of the pace line, you start kind of drifting over as soon as you start seeing the body go by you. I waited for them to go fully by, and then I was like sprinting up to the back of the train. So just like, and I've seen it with so many people, like new employees who just haven't ridden a group ride regularly. It's like you can be as strong as you want, but there's a lot of tactics and smarts to it.
And you're like amazing good. Like 6 watts per kilo, right? What hope do any of us have? Or what's your watt per kg?
Around 6, I think.
Yeah, about 6.
No big deal.
6.2.
Where's the numerical precision now? It's all gone.
Depends how many pancakes I had that morning.
Yeah, it's a fair point.
He measures the glycogen. Yeah, that's what Andrew was thinking. He's like, let me just take this sip of water.
Yeah. So he says that's how he's gotten to this point. But this summer, I'm planning to take a roughly month-long road trip with my girlfriend and hopefully hit a couple races at the end. I'll have my bike with me, and my girlfriend is understanding that I'll need to get some riding in on the road. But realistically, I probably will only be able to fit in 2 to 3 rides a week for maybe 4 hours. That still sounds like a lot of riding to me, but hey, that's awesome. We'll be at elevation for significant parts of the trip, and we'll stay generally active with long hikes and walks. But cutting back my volume substantially still makes me fearful of losing fitness. So do I stand any chance of maintaining race shape through this? Any tips to make it happen? If I can do 2 quick recommendations of really good resources for this, for you, Calvin, to be able to take in a ton of information. Number 1, it's episode 293 of the Ask a Cycling Coach podcast. Chad went into energy system decay, or in other words, like how we lose fitness over time, which, by the way, that's something that we are, that it's really cool because we're working on that in adaptive training, and it's cool to see that over time, see things decay when you don't pay attention to them and you neglect those energy systems. But with that said, 293, great breakdown. We also have that in a shorter video that you can check out called Detraining, Can You Lose Fitness? I'll put that in the link below or in the description below for everybody listening to the podcast as well. And Sean wrote a fantastic article called Detraining, What Happens When You Lose Fitness. So literally, Calvin, like exactly what you're talking about. So in this article, when you check it out here, there's actually a table even that makes it super helpful. And I actually just got it wrong on this, but the table makes it super clear for you because it's going to say within there what you can expect roughly for aerobic endurance, muscular endurance, and also like the sprint power, anaerobic side of things. And Alex, you had a good way of describing kind of how things come and how things go in terms of fitness with different energy systems.
Yeah, I always think of it as the longest to gain and the longest to lose, and the quickest to gain and the quickest to lose. So it's kind of like if you think about a build, you start with the aerobic, the threshold, the sweet spot, the endurance base, and then as you're getting closer to races, you have more VO2 and sprint sprinkled in because you can bring that up at the last second. And that's honestly, Calvin, how I would approach this is your aerobics there, and with these hikes and stuff, it's not the same as cycling, but it's still working that system. There has been in that same episode with Chad, he talked about how just keeping somewhat active during 2 weeks off actually helps you because you're not losing it completely. I would try to spread those, 4 hours as much as you can into 5 days, even if it's 5 45-minute sessions in the morning, and just get after like the key workouts, like 2 of those, like try to do like a VO2 or a sprint, like even just warm up 30-30s, cool down, something like that. And then maybe a couple endurance rides, and then take out those recovery rides and those days off and take those completely off the bike, and then kind of pair those ish with a hike. It's not going to be ideal, but it's spreading that is better than like 1 4-hour ride and then 1 4-hour ride kind of thing. So trying to be consistent on the bike and also making it 45 minutes, maybe make it easier to fit into whatever schedule you and your girlfriend have for this trip. Wake up, get a 45-minute session in, and be done for the day. Definitely not a morning person, but there's something so rewarding about having it done, and it's like 7 a.m. and you're like, everybody's sleeping.
So true. I'm not a morning person either, but it always feels so good to have it done so early in the day. It just it's a nice box to check. I agree with everything Alex is saying. You basically can make this into like a little taper if you think about it. And I think one of the key parts of what Alex is saying is to bring the volume of your rides down a little bit, because you are going to be having this other fatiguing load with the hikes, which will be in some senses rejuvenating because it'll be new and different and engaging, but it's still going to be a little bit taxing on your body. So balancing that with some shorter sessions on the bike, to Alex's point, and then making those a little bit more, polishing your top end, I think you could turn this into a really nice taper, as well as being a really nice mental break. So you show up to the races mentally fresh and rejuvenated, and you've got that sharpening of the top end ready to go, and you're not too fatigued. I think it could actually work out really nicely.
Just make sure you're starting those hikes in the first week. If the hikes are anything like Jen brings me on, you will be sore. So make sure you adapt to that by week 3 and 4 before you race.
Right.
That's a totally different aspect to this. If you are going to be adding in unfamiliar activities, they're going to take a toll, particularly if it sounds like you might be doing a road trip but staying in certain spots, because he's mentioned that you'll be at elevation for a significant period of time. I don't know if that's the case. If you are really just like in the car a lot, if you're hiking and you haven't been hiking and then you're sitting in the car and then you're hiking and you're sitting in the car, you are going to experience DOMs like no other. It's going to be pretty rough. So that's definitely a good tip, Alex, to not stack that
foam
at the
roller.
end. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, something.
But the elevation piece will actually help you as well. There is a fatigue to that. And even professional athletes, when they're up at elevation for the first week, will tack it down. You know, they're not going to go up there and just be like, sweet, VO2, let's go. So there is an aspect to that. And also, if your race is at sea level, as you come back down, like if you say plenty of time, if you're up at elevation for 3 of those 4 weeks, that's plenty of time to acclimatize and have a benefit from that as well. So enjoy it. Be
Calvin,
a normal human being.
I am going through this right now, but at a more severe rate of not training with my divorce. So I'm looking at my thing. In January, I was hitting pretty hard. And then since then, I have not hit it hard at all. So much the fact that my 6-week daily average of TSS right now is 6, which is not, because the week is 45. So I'm a little bit harder than you. But I want to give you some anecdotal experience of what I have done, and going from like, in the high, maybe like 80 down to like 6, which is not very good. So I agree. Everyone says I would actually use Train Now for this, and I would do like the climbing. So I really like doing like an over under threshold and then a VO2 max, have those two be your 2 intense days. And then the third day be whatever you kind of feel like, either an aerobic day or sweet spot, depending on how tired you are. If you're less tired and you have not that much time, I would do sweet spot. But if you are more tired, do the same amount of time and do aerobic. And if you have a lot of time and you're not tired, which doesn't sound like you do, you could do a long aerobic ride. That right there, though, will probably keep you pretty close for ramp test results, or maybe even raise it a bit because you've been doing so much volume and you upped it in those kind of crit length workouts, which is super awesome. In my experience, what has happened, and I've been doing workouts this whole time as I've been going down, it's the long stuff. So if you're in I wouldn't do a 3-hour race. Like that would be if I was in a 3-hour race, like a 50-mile road race or something, for talking about strategy, I would be sitting in that group that whole time and do no work. I would not try to get in any breakaway, and hopefully it's a sprint in the end. Because I feel like with that reduction in volume, especially over time when you come back to racing, it's that long, it's kind of like the durability over time that really like starts to go. Although your 1 minute power might still be just as awesome or even more. You might be able to do a short breakaway and it quit, like a 15 minutes at the end, and do a really good job on that. So that's how I would do it. And you might even, depends on how you'd go, but this could be a fun time too, where that third workout is a sprint workout. So if, especially you're going to come back for crit, so you're going to be really super fresh because you're not doing that much volume. Mm-hmm. You could have a 2-month block of real high intensity, 15 second, 10 second, 30 second, neuromuscular stuff, and come back and, do a couple moves. There's someone locally named Josh Rennie who he is really good at that. And if you combine that with race tactics, Amory, back me up on this, you just do it's like you do a couple things to get into the right groups and you time it right, everything else, you don't really put out that many watts because you're always in a draft. But you race like you're like this amazing Cat 1 racer who has all this fitness to go because you time it, you anticipate it, and you make that jump. And maybe you put out, 1,300 watts or something if you're a large man a few times, you're in the right spot, and then you just got to be there for the end. Is that right, Amber?
Yeah, exactly. You can make very little fitness go very, very far on tactics alone. And it doesn't sound like you're going to be going into this with very, very little fitness. So adjusting the tactics a little bit and then making sure that you're adjusting your prep going into it, I think it'll land you in a good spot.
Two, when I did just a little bit of riding, like 2 hours per week, over like 8 weeks, going from a lot of riding to a little riding, kind of similar to what you're doing, I think I lost like 8 watts on my FTP or something. And I was doing less than you're going to do. And I was having weeks off in between. So that, it's going to be it's very individualistic on that, but that's just a point for you. You're not going to go down so far.
Getting into the tactics side of things, I have a way of thinking of this that helps me stick to it. So when I'm really fit, I act like I just won the lottery in terms of like energy expenditure. And I'm just like spending money like crazy. I've got like one of those dollar bill machines, right? And I'm just like doing stupid moves all over the place. And because I just won he knows, because I just won the lottery, so to speak, or in other words, I have a ton of fitness, I feel like. And in almost every case, it ends up biting me, and I didn't indeed win the lottery, and then I have a negative balance, right, thereafter. But the way that I think of this, when I'm really focusing on a result, is I'm budget constrained. Like, I race like I'm on a budget. And I think, you know what? My goal isn't to end with $0 in this bank account, so to speak. My goal is to end with as much in there as possible and win. And Pete is fantastic at doing that sort of thing too when he needs to. He's also been known to race like he's just won the lottery as well. But just the same, it helps me a lot because then I get into every situation and my thought instantly goes to the racer aggressive mindset goes, ooh, do this really aggressive move, or try to change the race or influence the race with your own fitness. But the budget side of me says, no, there's no point in doing that. Sit here, wait, see what happens, ride efficiently, constantly find that pocket of least resistance, always be the person that is less eager, let the other people become more eager. The risks you'll take are different. The risks that you end up doing, they're pretty painful to endure sometimes. It's, oh gosh, that move is getting away and I wonder who's going to get it. But it will not be you. You will not be the one that ends up bringing that group back. And if you take that approach, it works. Nate actually had a great example of this last year in a race analysis video that we did, 2 years ago. Yikes, it's been a year, hasn't it? But that was...
is this the story of Land Park?
No, this is at Auburn. I think in the P1-2 or maybe 2-3 race that we did. But I'm up there and I'm constantly toward the front, policing things, chasing things down, racing like I won the lottery. And I thought in my mind, Nate said, I'm just going to surf the back and I'm just going to wait until the very end. And then at that point, I'm going to come forward. And I remember thinking like 10 times through the race, poor Nate's stuck at the back. He's probably like 17 groups back and there's splits and we might even end up lapping Nate. That's sad. He missed the moves. He didn't miss the moves. He was patient and the field is always less patient. You just have to wait and then they'll always make those moves. And it happens. It comes back together and Nate was in good position. That happened multiple times. Like you said, you brought up Land Park. There's a lot of them.
I'm the one every time I race road bikes.
I am the one that drops, dude. So
everybody needs to go to Nate's Instagram and TikTok and see that. Yeah. TR.
It's not on TikTok. It's just on Instagram. tr.nate.
Okay.
Do some more of those maybe tomorrow. But so somebody said that they want us to pick on each other more. So I'm going to pick on John now. He's on the forum. He is my employee. But this is what happens when John is the fittest person for the race. In the race, he usually has the least outcome. Like there's some races locally, I know John is the fittest person and he has the worst results. But what John does is he goes, I'm gonna make this hurt for everybody. And he's like, I'm gonna make the race so hard. And this happened at Land Park, my first Cat 3 race. And he's like, I'm gonna do that. And he attacked so much. You can see in the video, he was out the front and we looked at our power files. And I think I was just sitting in the group. My normalized power, yours was like almost 300 for the first 20 minutes.
Yeah, it was 315 or something. Yeah.
And mine was like 200. because I was in the draft the whole time, and I let the group accordion back and forth and that sort of stuff. I was just surfing. So although John thought everyone was like hurting like he was, he just made himself tired. And I guarantee that race, John, if you would have raced like me, because you're like a watt kilo higher than me, you would have, and you sprint more than me, you would have won hands down, no problem.
Sure.
Like, but also too, another thing that to John, what John does too is because of mountain biking, he has specific goals in races, and he will, he'll be like, this is a fitness race. I don't care about the outcome. I'm trying to do these sort of things. And then he set me up at the end. And it's more of like how John can hurt himself rather than other people. But there
are times, to your point, yes. But there are other times when I've absolutely raced that way and thought that I'm hurting the field, and I'm not hurting the field. I might be, it can be a good way, right, Amber?
That's my point.
Yeah. Like in some situations when it's not a fitness race, you're not going for some, alternative objective like that. But in some cases, Amber, would those sort of aggressive tactics, if you have like a couple people you really need to worry about in that race, and you know that they can't deal with those surges and those attacks that would hurt them, that's when that sort of tactic could be helpful. But it sounds like it's always a risky one if you look at it from the outside in, right? I don't know.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on that sort of racing?
I like that sort of racing, but it's always context dependent, right? So it's reading the situation. And like you said, maybe there's an opportunity there to really put the hurt on somebody who struggles a lot with surge and recover versus steady state stuff. And if you've already seen the fields getting softened up by some earlier attacks and they look like they're pretty blown, that's the time when you really want to hurt them with those surges. But I think the bigger picture, what we're talking about here, is learning how to race within different constraints. And I think that that's a really key thing. And so a lot of people struggle with going to races unfit mentally, or without a lot of physical fitness. They struggle with that mentally because there's this thought of like, oh, I'm just starting on the back foot. But that's often the best possible learning scenario, because as we're pointing out, if you decide either by decision or by necessity that you're not going to be racing the front of the race and you're going to be really following wheels, actually going through that and seeing how much less work you have to do by being patient is a huge aha moment that you don't necessarily get if you're always constantly worried about losing position. You're always constantly worried about, I have to be on the front, or I have to be near the front, or I have to be in every move. If you allow yourself to be patient and you think of it as, I'm going to try something new today, I'm going to try racing my bike in a new way, and impose some of those constraints on yourself. Like, okay, I'm not going to go in the first 3 breaks that go. I'm not going to go with at least the first 5 attacks. After 5 attacks go, then maybe I'll start following wheels. And if then I'm only going to follow wheels, I'm not going to be the first one bridging across. Those kinds of constraints that you impose on yourself can lead to a lot of these aha moments where you're like, whoa, I'm at 150 watts and I'm going 30 miles an hour in the group, and I feel like I'm soft pedaling. I barely have to put pressure on the pedals. And you can see somebody like Jonathan up near the front really putting the hammer down in the wind or really gassing themselves, and you feel amazing. And those kinds of realizations can be really, really helpful to you in the future when you encounter different race scenarios. It just becomes a part of your race intuition repertoire that you can pull from in new and different situations. So I love hearing about people going into race situations where they have these constraints, where there isn't a lot of fitness there, because it forces you to make different decisions and to approach the race tactically in a different way, which teaches you a whole new way of racing successfully, which you can employ whether or not you're fit.
I think there's the best racers, in my opinion, find ways to achieve success in a way that's not dependent fully upon their fitness. So like flipping it the other way around, all of us have had this. When you're just so fit, there was almost no way you could lose that race, and that's why you won. I know when I first started racing, I had more of those sort of scenarios where I'd be really fit, and of course I was just going to win, and that's why. But the best racers find ways to be successful regardless, not entirely, but regardless of making sure their fitness is in absolute peak form. Like if you look at a racer like Greg Van Avermaet, he's a great example of this, or even Mariana Vos is probably a better example of this, because she races cyclocross and road, and she'll do it the whole year round. And that's really hard to be able to, like, you can't maintain peak form, right? So her fitness, I'm sure if you graphed it, it's fluctuating throughout the year, but she finds ways to succeed across the board throughout the whole year. And that's something that's really impressive. So like to your point, Amber, it's about knowing yourself well enough and being able to anticipate what a group will do and really understanding your own limits and respecting those. And it doesn't mean that your limits have to be something that blocks you back to 5th place or lower. You can do better.
They can actually open doors for you, because instead of having this mindset that everything has to be optimized for you to be on race day, like you want to sign up only for the races that really suit you. You only want to be racing when your fitness feels like and it's a good place. You only want to race when there's certain people either in the field or not in the field. Throw that all out the window and reframe it and think of it more like the less optimal the situation is for you, the more learning opportunity there is for you in terms of becoming a tactically more savvy racer.
Growth mindset.
It makes it better when you have fitness too. Like, I think it puts you in those situations where not pulling through is a necessity.
Yes.
And it teaches you, whoa, I don't have to if this is a stupid move. Like, just because he looks at me or she looks at me and is like, pull through, it just like, nah, bro.
Yeah.
Like, it teaches you, like, you can do that with fitness. Like, I feel like you have like on yourself, right? Like, and I'm sure all of us have experienced this. When you come into it with a lot of fitness, you're like, well, I should probably pull through because I can.
Right.
So it's like when you can't, or you think like your race is going to be over if you do, it teaches you that you don't have to.
And when you've had, right?
Yeah.
It's like, oh, wow, the race still moves forward. Okay.
Yeah. And when you've had those previous experiences, those aha moments where you've been patient and you haven't missed the move and you've been able to conserve energy, then when you end up in the same situation and you're really, really fit, you will feel more confident about being patient because you've seen how it can work to your advantage previously, and you'll have confidence in that patience, which patience is one of the hardest things to do, especially when you're fit. But that will, to Alex's point, that will help strengthen that mindset for you.
Another tip too, so John's way of like hurting the field, it's field dependent. If there are 8 people in a local race, John's strategy, it is so tough because you have to either accelerate with those attacks or the race is over. And that is an extremely good method, I think, to soften the field. But if it's a 70-person race, and what you do if there's a accordion, so it stretches out and it goes really thin and then it slows down, everyone groups up. You want to be able to try to float up when it slows down and get ahead. And then when it accelerates, people can pass you when it accelerates. Especially the first, it's an hour-long crit, the first 30 minutes, and it keeps doing this thing, especially if it's something to do with like how the corners go and stuff, you can totally float back. So everyone is like trying to fight for those wheels, and then it slows down and you pass everyone again. And they had such an acceleration to do that, and you didn't have any, right? You smoothed out that power. And there's many race analysis videos that we have where this happens. Even at P12, like this stuff happens. Although there's some courses, we've mentioned this last week, it is strung out the whole time and you start in the back and you are in trouble. And, but it's again, as you get, I think that's I've never seen that in even a 2, 3, 4 or 5 race. These are when there's like big established teams. They have people, they're working the whole time. This is a whole huge strategy thing. And if you're at that level, you probably know already that that's going to happen. And you know that you're going to have to be lined up and all that sort of stuff.
Oh, and it's different if you're a marked rider too. Like if there's a marked rider at the back, like, and a team sees that, it's like, then you're in trouble kind of thing. But it's like, if you're unknown, like I think people, when they fill that gap, it's like, sweet, you're going to break the wind for me and make it so I don't have to sprint after you.
Easy.
Just don't. I floated back and I looked back and I'm like, I'm the last one. And there's no one behind me. Everyone is like, yeah, exactly. That's bad. Don't do that.
Yep. Calvin, I'm going to recap the main takeaways for you on this one. So number 1, yes, you will lose fitness over this time period, but it probably won't be as severe as you fear. Also, if you focus on quality, like Alex is saying, instead of quantity, but really making sure that the hours that you do put in are very focused on quality. Nate mentioned some great examples of doing over-unders, doing sprints, that sort of work, VO2 stuff. If you do really high quality, higher intensity work with that constrained time frame, you actually might be able to show up at a race partnered with sound and judicious racecraft and get a better result than you anticipate. So have fun on the road trip, and hopefully you get faster through all of this stuff. You're certainly going to become a more wise racer, I would say, as a result of it. So
for sure.
Next one's from Cameron, and he says, I thought about sending this into the podcast. He actually sent this to me personally. This is Cameron, actually, Summerson, who was on the Successful Athletes podcast. We've mentioned this before, but his son needed a kidney transplant, and the donor list was too long, and his son's condition was worsening, and he couldn't be a donor because he wasn't in shape enough. So he used TrainerRoad to get in shape to be able to donate his kidney to his son and keep his son alive. And it's just the coolest story. You should absolutely listen to that Successful Athletes podcast episode. It's super inspiring. But he says, I don't want to get any faster. Let me explain. He says, weird request, right? Here's the thing. I won't race, but I'm stronger than I've ever been thanks to TrainerRoad, and I love it. But there are downsides to getting faster. For example, I've been all but totally ostracized from my local cycling group because I'm too fast for them. Apparently, I push the pace too hard. There's a difference between being too fast and pushing the pace too hard, because Amber could show up like when she was a pro on a group ride with a bunch of us average folk, and she would have like rode smartly and kindly with all of us, because she probably could have just like laid down hammers and destroyed us all. So,
well, what year of Amber?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So there's a difference there, and we'll get into that. But he says, when I'm in these group rides, I feel like I'm not even doing any work. We're talking tempo. He says, I've gotten to the point where I ride my gravel bike with gravel tires on road rides with this crew, and it helps. They're good folks, just not totally obsessive about bike performance like I am. That said, I don't want to lose what I have. This is a small town, and there aren't a lot of cyclists. There are a pair of dudes who like to go out and crush on the road bike, and sometimes I catch up with them. He says, I can hang with these cats and have a blast, but I don't really end up going out with them that often. When they do, when he is invited out there, he says, I want to be able to do my share of the work. So his question, if I keep my FTP around where it is now, he mentions that he peaked at 228 earlier this year, had a minor surgery about a month ago, and it dropped back to 217. He mentions he's about 221 right now. If he just leaves that FTP there indefinitely, will I just hang on to what I have without getting noticeably faster or stronger? At most, I wouldn't be able to hold higher percentages of my current, or wouldn't I be able to hold higher percentages of my current FTP for longer periods of time, which I could easily turn on or off when I need. So he's mentioning that he doesn't want to just push himself out of the scene entirely, but he's kind of facing this dilemma. So my vote would be don't get any slower, and staying where you are is okay. But at the same time, I think that there's a difference between having the fitness and expressing the fitness. And they're two very different things, and different contexts can necessitate one approach or the other. But those are my initial thoughts.
Being able to ride a downhill bike with your friends.
There you go.
At that point, I think it's a rude flex. If you're like showing up on a downhill bike to ride with the road crew.
Maybe put drop bars on it. They won't notice.
No, but Alex, you do this, right? You ride a mountain bike with your people on road bikes, right?
Yeah. My regular training partners, I normally do. And again, much like Cameron, it's not an ego thing. It's just like we want to do the same workouts and ride together. So I just changed my bike setup. And for me, it's a benefit because I like to do a lot of my rides on the mountain bike anyway, because that's what I race.
I love the gravel tire idea. And there are more aggressive and larger gravel tires that will suck more and more watts.
Minion DHF. Just sound like tank treads with enduro tires going down the road. Yeah.
No, that's a great idea though. It makes you so don't clean your chain ever. Get your disc brake rubbing.
No ice friction for you.
Yeah.
Sponsor drop.
Right.
I feel like we need one of those like radio, like for every time someone plugs something, you know? Like every time Jonathan's like, oh, check it out on our Instagram page.
There we go. I think that there's another side of things too. Every ride will have a goal for me. Sometimes the goal is to get in a really hard workout. And if that's the case, then maybe you slap on those gravel tires, right? But if your goal is to just get, because there are plenty of group rides or people that I want to ride with, and I just want the social experience of riding with that person. Like I want to spend time with them. I want to talk to them. And even better if we can do it on bikes, because we both might like bikes, right? So there are different things that I get from group rides.
That's and in your case, on Derek. Like, sometimes I lay down some low wattage to ride with my friends.
Hardly. He's mentioning Derek Teal. He's very, very, very fast. Check it out on Instagram. But in this case, I think that is there another draw for you? You mentioned that you like these people and you have fun riding with them. Just ride with them and be an equal participant in the group. don't be there. And even though they may know that you're faster and you may know that you're faster, that doesn't mean that you're the one that has to carry some sort of, you don't have to be the captain of the group. You're just a part of the group.
Yeah, that's a great point. You can change where that kind of fits into your training, right? Like he was mentioning tempo is like where he was at, but it's like if you change that in for like an endurance ride, or even if like, you're super strong, like a recovery ride, just change where that sits. Like for a lot of people, the group ride is, they're throwing hammers the whole time. So it's like an intensity day, but you kind of change the mindset and change it in for like an endurance day or a recovery day, even if you want to go ride with those people. Like it just changes based on that fitness, right? Like I don't think the answer is not getting faster. I think if you enjoy the progression of fitness and training, you can just change where that group ride with your friends slots into it.
And being the slow person on group rides before, the hills are where you have to be the nicest to people in generally. If you are on a flat, it's kind of fun when someone goes to the front, you don't accelerate, but you stay Cameron at threshold or a little bit above, and you sit up a little more. Rather than being total small draft, sit up. That's another great thing. It'll give them a bigger draft and have you work harder. Go really fast, right? That's fun to go fast in a pace line with everybody. And then don't accelerate, don't attack. And then on those climbs, just don't give them a push either. And don't half wheel and talk to them. There's someone on this podcast that does that to me on their days keeping the watts down.
I don't know.
And it's very hard because they're a little smaller than me. But yeah, that's tough. What do you think, Amber?
I want to say two things. As somebody who has gotten a lot slower as of late, it's actually pretty okay. So I just want to say, like, if it's okay to have different goals here, and sometimes like allowing a little bit of the wattage to come down, just the FTP to come down, like it's okay. And so all goals are welcome here. And then the other thing, I think this is just a different way of framing the question. I like to think of training as a balance in terms of stewarding your energy, right? So if you're doing structured training with TrainerRoad, probably your goal is to get faster. And so you're doing a lot of these structured workouts in order to bump up your FTP, to gain fitness, and to get faster on the bike. But in order to do that, you have to be a steward of your energy stores. So that's as much, hitting your workouts, but also making sure that you're recovering well. But the other piece of that is making sure that you're enjoying what you're doing and that you're not burning out on it. And so you're maintaining a sense of engagement and fun and thrill and joy in what you're doing. And I know when I was really into heavy training for a long time, these kinds of group rides were the thing that really saved me, honestly. It kept me fresh and engaged and motivated. And so the goal with doing rides like this with other folks wasn't to get in a workout or to hit a certain TSS or a certain wattage. It was genuinely just to connect with people and to inject a little extra joy and motivation into my training plan. And so if you look at these rides from the bigger picture of maybe this is a component of what I need as a person to feel balanced and to feel energized enough to be sustainable over the long term. And I think that that's a good way of thinking about it. And then when you do that, what you do on the ride, the role that you fill becomes really different. So as an example, when I used to train a lot and I was really fit, which I'm not not as much right now, but when I was really fit, one of my favorite things to do on a group ride was not to go to the front, not to be taking pulls, not to be dragging people around. I kind of let everybody do what they wanted to do at the front, but I would stay at the back. And I would look for people that were struggling at the back. And I'd drop back for them and I'd bridge them up. And I'd drop back for them and I'd bridge them up. And it was so much fun because it helped other people really enjoy helped other people enjoy the ride a lot more. But I got a lot of work in, and not necessarily like without the frustration of having to do intervals. I felt like I was contributing and connecting in a really fun way, and you're making people's day. And it's just a totally different way of riding in the group.
Totally
I hope these are just
like Justin Williams used to come every once in a while to do the Specialized lunch ride. Like he'd come into town for fit or sponsorship obligations, and I had brought my hardtail out on the Friday Worlds ride, and we got to a flat section, 3610 just wasn't cutting it, and he actually looked back and saw that I was falling off the back, and he pulled back and brought me back to the group.
It's awesome.
Good man. Yeah. Nate,
I hope all the people, I hope when Amber dropped back, I hope they were just like egotistical men who would like, would not want a woman to do it. But then Amber's just like,
fragile male ego.
hey, I'm really good, right? Like, I'll just come back, no problem. You want to ride? And just blew some minds and change
like
their perspective.
Yeah, that whole saying of getting chicked, just repeatedly getting chicked to the egos that are most fragile to it,
And Amber's so fit, she just drops back.
Said I could beat on some forum last week.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. It's amazing. So yeah, Cam, don't worry about it. I would say that find where that group ride slots into your greater mix of what you need, and enjoy that. Don't think that you need to get slower. You don't have to ride wide open at all times. And I would say get faster. So then when you ride with those other two guys, you can stick with them too. So. Yeah,
I have one other comment for Cameron on the amount of fitness. So you could, Cameron, if you want to, you could try to like extend your FTP out, like especially with the level system, go to 1 hour. You can make custom workouts and go longer. That is possible. You go 70, maybe even 80 minutes at threshold. I mean, it's going to be how you express it, to John's point in it, because even with that, you're going to be able to do some pretty wicked efforts against your friends. So even if you work at really long sweet spot or really long aerobic stuff, it's still going to be beneficial in your fitness, and it's not going to make you fit without not being able to drop them. So it's going to be more important of how you do it inside of there. So you could go either way. And it's the fun thing too is if you do get faster, and as Alex said, these rides are a little bit easier for you. I mean, you burn more calories on your other rides and stuff. Just being fitter in general, you get the health benefit of your heart and cardiovascular benefits and all this sort of thing. So it's pretty cool. I mean, your body composition changes even more, but you can still be with friends that are slower. You don't have to drop them.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yes, you do.
That was such good deadpan.
I had deja vu. Didn't we do this exact same thing like a month ago or 2 months ago? Yeah. The exact same conversation? I forget.
This is why I don't have friends.
Yeah. I was going to say, Alex can't really, this is Alex's life at all times. He doesn't really ride with people it's impossible to ride with people that are faster than him on a regular basis. Doesn't happen.
Oh, John, we have to mention there is that wheel thing because people will message us. We know there's that wheel thing that can give you extra. So there's something you put on your bike and will add resistance so that you can ride with somebody else. We are aware of that product. Also, last time I said, if you have a question, message John on Instagram. That was a joke, people. Some people thought, okay.
My inbox was aflame. It was out of control.
Very funny joke. Really, you message him if you want to get an adaptive training early, but you have to ask him 3 times. Just kidding.
My gosh, no.
Just kidding. Don't do that. Again, John and I, we don't control who's in adaptive training. It is somebody else. I'm not going to tell you who it is, but
it's also not me. Okay,
it's not Amber.
It's not Alex.
But
although it would be clever for
let you
us
know the secret.
to hide that lever with Alex would be clever. Yeah.
If you want the best support, don't message John. Don't message any of us on Instagram. I mean, it's serious. There are things that happen and issues where engineering hasn't done with support. I used to know all this stuff like 8 years ago. I don't know it all. Support@TrainerRoad.com email, and also we have a chat function on the website, and you can answer. You have the same people; they'll answer you right then. And so that is the best way. If you have a question or anything about it, please do that.
And we have awesome customer support staff too. This isn't
they're amazing.
Something that we treat as a low priority. It's a very, very, very high priority for our company. We train them well. They're awesome people that contribute a ton to our company. So they're a pleasure to talk to as well. So
you might even make some friends.
Indeed, yeah. In fact, some of them even are really fit and crazy fast cyclists themselves. We're like our support agents. We have support agents that are faster than all of us on the podcast by far. Like it's pretty crazy. So anyways, with all that said, let's jump into some rapid fire questions really quick. From Blair, he says, are you swimming yet for your triathlon challenge?
Yes.
Wait, what? Alex is swimming? No, Alex isn't swimming. He can't. No.
I don't
Amber,
know.
are you? I was wondering about this. So you did swimming your whole life, and now bike seats partnered with cycling, partnered with pregnancy, partnered with all that stuff. It gets difficult over time. Are you anticipating like swimming at all throughout pregnancy? Is that like a thing that you're like, hey, I'll go back and swim since I'm basically a pro at swimming?
Definitely no longer a pro at swimming. But actually, now that you mention it, literally in the last 2 or 3 weeks, I've had this urge to get in the pool again, which I'm telling you guys, I burned out really, really hard on swimming for a long time, to the point where the smell of chlorine, even if it was chlorine bleach or something in a completely different scenario, would give me heart palpitations sometimes. Like, it was a serious Pavlovian response. So I haven't had the inclination to swim in a really, really long time. And actually, just over the last month, I was thinking it would be really nice to get in a pool right now. And maybe that's just because I want to get away from gravity. That might have something to do with it.
Float for a while.
But it actually sounds really appealing to me right now. And so now I'm more concerned with just making sure that I have a safe place to go do that. Yeah, that is something that I'm actually pretty excited about, because as you mentioned, it is getting increasingly difficult to ride. It's not impossible, and I actually feel more comfortable and natural on a bike right now than I do just like walking around the house, which is funny. But
even
probably,
with the hip angle?
Yeah, interestingly, it's
amazing.
I mean, it's funny, like hitting the belly with the top of the thigh, that's for sure. But other than that, like, I feel good on the bike. I feel like it's where I'm meant to be. So I still feel that way, which is nice, but that may change. Still have a few months to go. So yeah, I think a swim might feel really good. And it would be kind of fun to get just some of the baseline mechanics back. So that, yeah,
she's gonna destroy us so bad, like in this try challenge. Like, we were talking about energy system decay and how quickly things come back. Like, Amber is like on like hyper progression with that. She's gonna get back into the pool and like touch the water, and she'll be at Phelps level. Watch. Yeah,
my muscles have all shrunk down, but they're like pure mitochondria now.
Yes, exactly.
They're just waiting.
It's like dehydrated fruit. Okay, so the next two questions from Octavo and Becca, we're going to lump them both in because they're both about cross-country mountain biking and the World Cup level that has happened over the last 2 weeks. And it's back, and it feels really cool to watch that racing. So Octavo says, what an opening World Cup. Who are your biggest surprises? Why could nobody hold with Loana Lecomte? What made Mathieu van der Poel blow up so early? How did Pidcock go from 100th to the podium? Which, for those that don't know, Pidcock had great results as a U23, very good results. But then when you go to elite, and then considering that they didn't have any racing, he didn't do those. He basically had to reset from scratch. So that's why he had a starting position that was way far back.
Yeah, and they froze the points with COVID. So what they did is they used the March 2020 rankings, which I think Pidcock didn't have a ranking at that point, and then they added in the World Cups that they did in Nova Mesto. And I think since he races a U23, they're also reduced amount of points. So I think he had 0 starting March 2020, and then he won both rounds of the U23 World Cup and then World Championships, which would give him 300 or so, which equates to about 100th. Just with how they froze the points, he had no opportunity to gain more this year.
Yeah, crazy. But Becca says, and then we'll just answer all this. She says, hey, podcast team, especially Amber, which she says, I'm finishing up my senior year in high school, and I'm a varsity NICA athlete. I love World Cup racing, but feel like my normal role models and heroes are surprisingly off pace to Loana Lecomte after watching the first World Cups this year. What do you think she's doing differently, and why has she been so dominant? So quick explainer for those that didn't watch this. Loana Lecomte, she's a young athlete. Last year, she won a World Cup, and it was her first time racing elite World Cups, and they only had 2 rounds last year with that modified schedule. And this year, she's won both of them. And I know the last one by over a minute, I think 1.5 minutes over second place. And then I think the first one somewhere around a minute, but I could be wrong with Albstadt. And she has the most poker face I've ever seen of any cyclist. It is amazing.
So awesome.
She's like out for like a easy Saturday ride is what it looks like every time. And she's just walking away from like Pauline Ferrand-Prévot, Kate Courtney, Yolanda Neff, like all these like insane athletes. So she is something to behold. It's incredible how dominant she is. I watched the races in full detail, of course, and have like a lot of thoughts on that stuff. But Amber, do you want to start on Loana Lecomte and kind of like those sort of performances in general?
Yeah, so not the resident mountain bike expert here by any stretch, but I will just say in my experience, and I'm old now, so that's a lot of experience, these kinds of breakout performances usually come down to excellent preparation and execution. and a little bit of luck in the mix, right? So oftentimes, like sometimes the stars just align in a really good way, and a lot of that's within your control and some of it's just not. So when we see breakout performances like this, it's really tempting to look for the secret sauce or the silver bullet or the one thing that they're doing differently. Like they've discovered something that nobody else knows about and they're nailing it and we just don't know what it is yet.
One easy trick.
And it's honestly, it's never that glamorous. It almost never comes down to just one differentiator. It really comes down to doing a lot of things really, really well and executing on all of those things really, really well. So it's not the most exciting answer that you may have been looking for, but yeah.
Are you trying to tell me it's hard work, grit, consistency, focusing on recovery, nutrition, and managing stress? Is that like for overtime? And then throw genetics in? Yeah, right?
Yeah.
A little bit of luck, some skill, some mental resilience. Yeah, I mean, it's
and royal bee jelly. 2 grams of that every day.
Alex, do you notice anything unique about her? I do notice a few things that I want to add in that certainly don't cancel out what you just said, Amber and Nate. Like all of that is there. They mentioned even on the broadcast, they were like, she watched Julie Bresset win, or no, not win. Did she win the Olympic gold? I can't remember. Or get a podium. I think she won Olympic gold. But she watched her win it, and she is a small girl, and she was like crying because thought it was such a cool achievement, and she was like, I'm going to be a mountain biker. So like she, from that age, and also the French development team is known for being incredibly good and helping these French athletes. So she has known, and she seems like a very focused person who's built toward it. But so all that stuff, yes. But Alex, do you notice anything unique about her?
I was going to touch on the French are really good at developing athletes across the board within cycling. That's a huge part of it. I also think not only is she, an incredible climber, an incredible descender, a full package, I think there was a bit of that luck. Like when you look at like a 1.5 minute winning margin at Nova Mesto on its own, you're like, wow, she just blew everybody away. But I think you have to take it with like Kate crashed and broke a lever, and Pauline Ferrand-Prévot crashed in short track and Yolanda Neff isn't on her top form currently. And not to take anything away from her, she might have still won, and I probably put money on that she would. But I think there's just a lot more than just like her walking away from the competition that goes into that. And I know like Rizvet's pulled out because of period cramps at that race. So there's a lot going on that you don't see on the results sheet. But taking nothing away from the fact that she's an incredible athlete and she's really, really good at riding a bike.
Yeah, I mean, you still have to execute even if things are going wrong for your competitors, because things can go wrong for you too. So
absolutely,
it's still got to line up. But yeah,
some things that I notice about her that are unique. Number one, she's extremely efficient in how she rides the bike. So you'll see that with a lot of athletes, mountain bikers in particular, there's a lot of body movement when they pedal. They display their strain through that movement and that loss of efficiency that they have. However, she is just stone-faced, but then she's also extremely centered on the bike. And when you watch her when she descends, and this is, I don't know, if it's the French development team and they have incredible downhill athletes all the way through as well. So I don't know if there's crossover. She's always in the right spot. She's not the sort of athlete that looks out of control. And the reason is because that her body positioning, she's just in the right place. She's very, very good at that. That course was very tricky and slippery. And if you have technique that is sloppy, conditions that are slippery or sketchy will always magnify any problem that you could come across, right? Because your body's in the right spot and therefore weight will shift, tires will slide, and bad stuff will happen. But she's always in the right spot. So efficiency and doing that, and then of course partner with everything else. But the other interesting thing to me as well is to see how good Tom Pidcock is. And I knew that he was good. We've watched cyclocross, we've seen that he's good. But for him to be able to just decide to drop Mathieu van der Poel, and then also to come heads up in a sprint and almost beat him basically in a sprint, get close to him in a sprint and really just like mechanicals hold him back. That's really big. Like Mathieu van der Poel is a huge rider with a huge amount of power. Tom Pidcock is a small rider with a small amount of power, relatively speaking to him, yet he still is able to hold with him. I think that's super cool. And it is a bit weird to just see like Nino Schurter getting 7th. And I don't even know if it was necessarily a bad day. It's kind of like a changing of the guard. But it's super interesting. And if anybody's into racing, you should watch it because it's a really good trainer.
How do Americans watch these, John?
Red Bull TV. They broadcast them and they're really easy to find on demand too. So if you just go to redbull.tv, then you can look at events, and then in their events, they'll have all the different World Cups that they've had. So you can watch short track and cross country Olympic for the different groups.
But you can only watch them. They only have them on for so long. So you have to kind of be up to date on it. They're great to watch. I love watching them with the sound off. You get music on. Mm-hmm. You're doing your hard workout. You know, I'm like, oh, I'm such and such, and you think you're Alex Wilde as you're riding.
For sure. Can we also just say kudos to Haley Batten? And this is partial, us being Americans here, but kudos to Haley Batten. So exciting to see a young American athlete just like rise to the occasion and repeatedly deliver on this. And then also Chris Blevins for getting, he was riding top 10 for a long time and getting top 20s in World Cups, and this is his first stab at elite racing. Like, wow, like it's really exciting. And then Riley almost winning U23. So Americans are coming in mountain biking. It's exciting stuff. So Robert asks, can you quickly explain the reasoning behind why I should follow power instead of heart rate, and explain what RPE is and how to use that? I'm new to all this and heard you mention this on a previous podcast. At this point, I'm just using Strava. Nate, can you explain that stuff in a rapid fire manner?
Sorry. Got something in my throat? Not rapid. Power is it is a measurement of how much power you're putting into the pedals as you're going. And this is like, imagine it, not the speed. I'm going to use a car analogy, but it doesn't really work, so I won't. Maybe like RP is like the heart rate, or sorry, I'm killing this. Let's start over.
Crushing it, Nate.
Crushing it. Power is I own a cycling training software company. I've explained this a few times. Okay, so power is like the instantaneous of like what you're actually doing. With heart rate, it's always lagging. So it takes time for it to come up and takes time for it to come down. But heart rate also isn't very sensitive. So if you change your wattage or your amount of output by a significant amount, your heart rate might only change by 2-3 beats per minute. And it's really hard to get fine grain control in there. On top of that, heart rate is impacted by the time of day, hydration, sleep, fatigue, menstrual cycle, when your motivation is, the music you're listening to, how relaxed you are with your shoulders. All these things will change that stuff. So you get this number that doesn't actually equate to what you're actually doing and could do all this stuff. If it would be so nice for us if we could if it would be just as good to use heart rate instead of power inside of TrainerRoad, because then no one would have to buy a power meter. Just be like, hey, just buy a $20 heart rate monitor and you're good to go. If we thought that was better, we would totally do that, because we don't even sell power meters. We wouldn't make any, we would have a bigger company, we would impact more people. So that is why it's better. And especially you'll see this if you do some of these like on-off kind of workouts. If you use power, if you use power, you get it after, I don't know, a session or two. RPE, that is the rate of preserved effort. And what that is how do you feel? And classically, there's this thing called the Borg scale, which is ridiculous. And it goes from like 8 to 20.
So that's how you really feel.
It's like,
why 8 to
8 to 23? It's like it's
yeah. What is it? It's I forgot the exact number, but I'm pulling it up right now. It is 7 to 20, and I don't know why Borg thought that would be a good scale for humans, but like usually they say 1 to 10. So 10's all out. 1 is like you're just lying in bed. And what RPE is good for is understanding how you're feeling in the moment, because that is always important. But what happens is if you look at power, what you're actually doing and how you're feeling at the beginning of a workout, usually your RPE is low and the watts might be, let's say you're at 200 watts and your RPE is low. And then as you go through that workout, the watts will stay the same and your RPE goes up. And if you hold any wattage for long enough, your RPE is going to go to 10. There's no question. Sometimes it just might take 10 hours. Mm-hmm. And that is, in a race situation, it's very important. If you're in a time trial, you might look at, your RPE is going to be lower, especially for those first 2 minutes. You look down. How many times you guys look down at your power meter? You're like, it must be broken, because no way is 450 watts this easy, or I'm having a magical day. And you think that it's good. And then 2 minutes in, you're like, oh, darn. That was a really, really bad idea. I think, any questions? Did I do it okay?
I thought it was great. I wouldn't add anything.
Tell me more, John.
Fantastic.
Okay, just kidding.
It was just wonderful. I like listening to it. Sorry. Oh, man. Okay, let's go into Kevin's question. He says, I had a question regarding TT position flexibility. Like most athletes, I have a reduced FTP in my time trial position, as well as I find it more fatiguing to stay in a focused aero position for a long interval. You and everyone else, Kevin, TT positions are hard. So he says, I know the podcast mentioned the benefits of core and strength training, but are there any stretches or flexibility exercises that can be used to help reduce the power drop and fatigue from being in the TT position for a long period of time? I recall Nate mentioning Coach Lee's pre-dynamic ride stretches or pre-ride dynamic stretches that work like magic. Is there anything else you've found that could help? Thanks and 5 stars all around.
I want to say your drop in FTP and the uncomfortableness might have absolutely nothing to do with flexibility. That those aren't always related. I know with mine, they're not related at all. So just don't think that, if I just have more core work and I can touch my toes, my power in the TT position is going to go up. It's most likely a hip angle issue. And then the fatigue is usually you might be too low. The angle of your neck could be too high. You could do exercises to help. It could be where your elbows are like the width of them, the length, a whole bunch of stuff, how you hold it, you're shrugging, all these sorts of things are not flexibility issues.
Mm-hmm. Kelly, we did a great podcast with Kelly Starrett from Mobility WOD, which actually now is called the Ready State. So if you look up Kelly, he's like one of the foremost, honestly, like the thought leader on mobility, really. He's fantastic and has great content that you can find as well on Instagram, and his book, Becoming a Supple Leopard and Deskbound, and just a great resource and great guy, and also cyclist. So I would recommend checking out the episode that we did with him. I can't think of the name right now, but we recorded it actually at Strava HQ, and it's a special episode. If you look up his name with Ask a Cycling Coach, you'll find it, and I'll link down below in the description on this episode, because he talks about the difference between flexibility and mobility. They're two different things. So like Nate said, you could be like what a Cirque du Soleil sort of an athlete, I guess a performer, I guess you'd call them, but you could bend in half twice, right? But that doesn't mean that you'll be great in a TT position. The difference between flexibility and mobility is talking about effectiveness across a range of motion within your joints or anything else. Whereas flexibility is just your ability to like what that range of motion is. So it's almost like, here's the range of motion, but can you actually use your body effectively and your strength over the course of that whole range of motion? That's what mobility is concerned with. So, and that's really what you're trying to get used to, and why we talk about getting used to the TT position and spending time training there, working yourself into it, and making sure that you don't have any sort of like big impingement where it's like, I actually can't bend my hip to that degree. And as a result, I just can't operate in this TT position. So working with a combo of bike fitters and then also on mobility can, really help with that for sure. Sorry, Nate.
Here's the problem is that when you bend over, there's an optimal spot between aerodynamics and power for each person at that given point in time. And then as you work into a position, usually your power goes up. Like you get used to it and you get better at putting power at that position. That doesn't necessarily mean that is your optimal position, like how far down you are. And we've seen this in the pro ranks where I love seeing this, where there's some pros that are amazing time trialists and they have so much stack, right? Mm-hmm. Where I remember when I used to do triathlons, everyone used to brag like, how low stack do I have? How low can I go? All this sort of stuff. And then these people who actually use science to it, hey, I'm faster if I'm up a little more, I'm more comfortable, and I can actually have the right balance between aerodynamics and power.
I'm feeling personally attacked over here.
A little bit. Think about you. John could be faster a little bit higher. I think you actually were faster a little bit higher than on Slam Dunk. Yeah. Yep. Just because you get so much, your power gets reduced so much, although you do have world-class CDA.
But hey, I do look cool, so that's...
It's not nothing. Like when you open our app, you see John. He's very...
It's not nothing.
Yeah. The problem is, unless you have a wind tunnel, it's very hard. You can do some... there's like the Robert Chung method. If you Google it, there's some ways out there. There's now products coming out that you can put on your bike. I haven't I don't know the accuracy of any of these, but very interested in that to be able to see what is the right ratio. And that's the thing. And the most common problem with amateurs, I think, is they go down too far, too fast, and they are making themselves slower. Like you spent $8,000 on these bike with wheels and stuff, and then you just kill your speed by slamming yourself too low. Mm-hmm. I think a very gradual reduction where you keep watching it, you maybe do it for 3-4 months, you see some time trial, like you can tell, did I get faster or not in these races that I did? And then you go down a little bit more and you give it some time rather than I'm gonna take all the spacers out. Totally done that maybe like 9 or 10 times. Like, this is the time, because you want to say, if I reduce my CDA by this much, I would now beat John in a time trial. And I do it today. Right? It takes me like 3 hours because time trial bikes are very annoying. But you could do it. Alex, you want to say something?
Yeah, I was gonna say 3 things. Well, I'll start off with I'm no TT expert and I've never ridden a TT bike, but as far as
by the way, it seems like his right, like
6
small
watts per
rider,
kilo,
super high power, very analytical, all about the numbers, data. Like also
Pace
really good at steady
perfectly.
state efforts and pacing. Alex, what do you?
What's your problem,
It's
Alex?
just a matter of time. It's a matter of
If
time.
only I was born in England.
Alex, can't you like borrow a time trial bike and try one of those things at a local like NorCal TT?
Yeah, it'd be fun to do for sure.
Do it.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I think you know a guy or something called Specialized. I'm sure you can find a bike. I'm sure you can find a skin suit, helmet. Specialized makes all that stuff.
Just 6 watts per kilo. Hey, you know what? There's actually a wind tunnel there if you didn't know about it. Like, you could probably get in. And
A win.
that's what I said, wind tunnel.
Yeah.
But yeah, Alex, 6 watts per kilo time trialist. How tall are you, Alex?
6 foot.
And are you not very wide, right?
He's narrow as a rail.
Yes.
He has
Alex.
shoulders, but narrow as a rail.
6 feet is like, I think that's a very, like you're in the sweet spot for power to aero, especially if you don't have super wide shoulders. Alex, dude,
About this way.
you should try it. Alex is going to like
TT
smoke
national
everyone on
champ.
his, and not
Here
even
it
realize.
comes. Yeah.
Okay, sorry. Okay, finish your first thought.
Going back to the fact that I've never ridden a TT bike, so take it with a grain of salt. But again, we do have a wind tunnel, and I have chatted with people. And going back to Nate's point, lower isn't always better on a power scale, but it's also not always better on a CDA scale. Like you have to understand, I'll do it for people who are watching this on YouTube, but like if your TT position is here and then you lower it, it doesn't automatically mean you're going to be here. You could do this. Mm-hmm. So your body's still in the same place, but you're now strained at your shoulders. So if you
I'm going to narrate what he just did. He showed that going lower with his arms doesn't mean that his torso lowers. It could just mean that his arms lower and that his torso stays in the same spot. And that doesn't mean that you're more aerodynamic just because your arms are lower.
Absolutely. And what I'm getting at is like on a road bike, if you're in the drops, it's actually less aero than if you get a 90-degree angle and hold your hoods. And the reason is because your arms are straight when you're in your drops. And those are more aerodynamic drag than if you were in the same position with your hoods and then you're in line. So the air is going across your forearm parallel to the ground, reverse instead of perpendicular to the ground. So keep that in mind. And then 2 tricks I have for hip angle are take advantage that you can now tilt the front of your saddle down more. So you can open up that hip angle. And I also run 170 cranks. This is to protect my back for my L5-S1 herniation, but it also creates less hip flexion because your knee comes up less. So not, the gold standard, but 2 things to consider if hip angle is a limiter for you. And I've found with me, it's like, it's kind of an on-off switch. Like once it's too impinged, it's just like cutting the cord. So finding a right hip angle, I think, is huge.
I don't know how angling your seat down would improve your hip angle.
It can change the angle of your pelvis.
Yeah, it allows your pelvis to tilt forward and become more open.
But aren't you
Instead of
still
rolling it back.
But aren't you well, you can just do that on any saddle. So I guess it would be less perennial pain for them, I guess men and women. Is that a woman thing too? I don't even know.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
With that saddle that way.
Yes.
But actually where your knees are in the
No,
terms of
it doesn't change where your knees are. It just tilts your pelvis
It helps you
forward.
tilt your pelvis. Yeah.
Yeah.
Be more comfortable.
For sure. Yep. Amber, what points did you have to share on this? Because we've all shared our thoughts. You're the one that's raced professional time trials in the World Tour. So
I'm just sitting here nodding because everything you guys are saying is spot on. I think, mobility. I think a lot of people conflate flexibility, mobility. That's the first thing. So probably mobility is the thing that you're after. And again, mobility is not always the thing that's going to solve a drop in FTP based on a position. And the other thing is that the drop in FTP doesn't necessarily mean it's a bad thing, because it could be, if your position has been fitted well, that the aerodynamic benefit you get outweighs the drop in the FTP. And then the other thing to keep in mind is when you're talking about, and I think that I'm going to guess here and read between the lines, that our question poser is looking for a really good performance. And if you're looking for a good performance outcome, you're really better off looking at execution on the day. And there are so many other factors that will come into play that would probably be more meaningful than that little difference in FTP. Granted, you want to stack the deck in your favor, but it's something where if you're really happy with your position, you don't want to change your position, work on getting strong in that position, and then really just focus on executing well in the race on the day. And it's funny because when you analyze a race and you look back in retrospect, it's really easy to see how the numbers helped or hindered you. But when you're actually executing on the day, the feeling of the experience is a lot more about racing the course than it is reading and analyzing the numbers. So save the analysis for afterwards and really gear up, put yourself in a good position to perform well, which is getting your fitness and your fit dialed. But then remember that on the day, the experience of executing well has a lot more to do with reading the course and that, just getting out there and attacking it and pacing well. I mean, that's not necessarily going to be tied to numbers on the day.
for sure.
I have a experience share. So I have trouble getting my bars high enough, like my pads, because I'm a tall guy, if you haven't heard, and my saddle's so high that the drop between that and my pad, I'm 5'8", 5'18". Yeah, 5'18". That joke never gets old. The drop is so much that I'm forced to have a certain amount of drop unless I do something custom. And in our local TT course, I rode it. My power drop's 40 watts easy. I think it's even more than that. But when I did it again, where I was so frustrated, I just did it on my road bike within the drops, and I was faster on my road bike than my TT bike, and which is super annoying. And that's because my power was so I dropped compromised because of that drop. I talked to Envy and I got custom stuff to go up higher, and I haven't ridden it yet because of COVID, but that's super annoying and frustrating when you have a very expensive time trial bike and you're faster on your road bike because of you have too much drop. And I still have it. I mean, I still had all the spacers that were possibly available. So that's another thing. If you're very tall, you might have to go up even higher than you realize in order to be fast.
What kind of TT bike do you have?
I have a Cervelo P5.
And what kind of road bike do you have?
Avenge.
I see what he did there. Throw on Alex's little air horn for the sponsor plug for Specialized on that one. For Alex, yeah.
I just want to make a quick comment here because I think there's two other things that often get confused. One is you can be mechanically constrained, and that from a position on a bike, which can contribute to diminished power output, right? But there's also the mechanical constraint also translates in some cases to just sheer discomfort, and something really even just a minor level of continuous discomfort, even if it's not actually mechanically constraining you or mechanically causing a drop in FTP, that little tiny bit of distraction consistently over time will cause a drop in wattage. Big time. So I almost wonder if, it's less about the mechanical constraint of the position difference between the road bike and the TT bike, but more about that distraction. And the other thing is if you're distracted by your concern of a drop in FTP or power output based on your position on the TT bike, that's another that's more cognitive load that's wasted because you're not focusing on your execution and on the race, and you're focusing on this concern that, what if my watts are 5 watts lower or 10 watts lower? But to be able to just completely focus on the execution is really, really important. So eliminating aspects of your fit or your mentality that are distracting you is probably, I mean, that can gain you a good 5-10 watts right there.
My goodness, that is so me. I cannot I don't like noises coming from my bicycle. If my drivetrain's making a noise, I can't PR. I swear. It's not possible. Yes, so much that's the thing that I think a lot of people misunderstand is they try to separate it entirely from performance, but your fitness has to go through layers of filters to the point where it's actually expressed out on the road or trail. So those filters, the more you can open up or more filters you can remove, you're better off. Nate's got a cheeky grin.
I've got a race strategy thing. You make your bottom back bracket so creaky and your chain bad, then you show up next to John on climbs. Right? So he just hears it.
Don't do
forever. He will
throw a water bottle at you or something.
He won't be able to. He will do something bad tactically, like attack off the front.
Yes,
or
I will.
He will just concentrate. It's like the quote the Raven Nevermore, like the tapping. He will go insane.
Nate, you're just blowing me up over the past 2 weeks. My Instagram DMs are blowing up. Now at races, people are going to throw me off. Oh, it's terrible.
Just squeaks.
Oh,
Lots
I
of
don't like
squeaks.
noises coming from the bike. It needs to be a silent machine. Then it's working well. So
I'm going to record it and put it in your office somewhere so you hear it once in a while. Just for like 8 seconds, then it stops and you'll be like, where was that?
I must say, I think I've gotten better with that since having a child. Because it's like life is just never.
Just tune stuff out.
Don't call CPS on me. Don't do that. No, you just get used to life never being quiet, right? When you have a kid, it's just not. So I think I've gotten better with that. But at the same time, if my bike's making noise, I'm like, I have to stop. I have to take the entire bike apart and fix whatever this is. I cannot sustain the noise anymore. So
that is
luckily
a pro
your bike
parenting
doesn't feel the same way. It's this guy keeps huffing and puffing up there. I can't do anything.
It's true. What were you going to say, Nate?
That is a pro parent tip, though, especially for anyone who's about to be a parent. There are certain times, it's so hard when you're first with your first kid, but there are certain times where you should ignore your kid. And it seems weird, but they need to self-soothe and do things themselves and stuff. And they got it. But the trick is when you should and when you shouldn't, which is very hard. And at the beginning, at least in my experience, what we did is very much any noise at all, you run up and be like, oh my goodness, what can we do? And the second one, though, was much like, oh, it'll be fine. And then he slept through the night. It was good.
He's turning out great, too. There you go.
Yeah, just got to stick.
Is everyone else's Zoom horrible? It's just mine.
Yeah, Zoom's going crazy. Yeah, for sure. Yeah,
Mine's been okay.
Well, bear with us if you've had any issues on what you've been seeing. Do we have time for one more question? I think we do. Mm-hmm. Quick one. Cool. From Tom. He says, hello, TrainerRoad. I've been trying to lose some weight, but the idea you keep bringing up is that the same watt per kilogram being heavier is almost always better. And I totally agree, because more watts sounds way cooler than less weight, eh? He says, my question, however, would be, how would you go about it? For instance, do you eat more and just hope for the best, like bulking up in the gym, full body or not? Any other ideas? Thank you, from Tom.
I'm just giggling because, do you just eat more and hope for the best? And Alex just started laughing right away and looking up, and I'm just thinking about the precision mentality versus that statement. It's a good contrast.
Nate and I's approach would probably just be Popeyes for breakfast, lunch, and dinner for a week.
It's bulking. It's productive.
Amber, I just imagine those bodybuilders with the ice cream. It's just bulk it up. That's great.
That's it. Right. Amber, you the episode we did with Ben Jacquemain would be good for this, right?
Absolutely. I think that's a really good one. And in that episode, as a preview, but I really recommend listening to the whole thing because he did exactly this, and not intentionally, but he did it a little bit by accident. He was coming back from injury and he was concerned about being in really good shape for team camp. So he just went out and trained as hard as he could. And he knew that in order to train as hard as he could day over day, he was going to have to really replenish what he was burning every day. So he, for the first time in his career, let go of constraining how much he was eating, and really just made sure that he was fueling plenty to go out and just ride crazy hard every day, day in, day out, day in, day out. And he got super strong, and he was heavier than he'd been as well. But what he found was the robustness of his fitness was at a totally different level. So instead of just, not only was he now the first to the top of the climb, but he didn't have he recovered so much faster after getting to the top of the climb first, that he was also able to be really effective on the flats after the fact. So it was a really cool eye-opening experience that he had on accident. And I think that there's a lot of really powerful learnings from that. So I highly recommend listening to that episode, because I think it goes to this point, and it talks specifically about how he did that on accident, but you could also try the same thing on purpose.
Mm-hmm. It's about training your body and putting your body in training your body to do more work. And to do that, you need to put your body in the best position to be able to do that more work. Mm-hmm. And that is, from this perspective at least, making sure that it's adequately nourished. So I think a lot of cyclists, if they just focused on making sure that they gave their body really healthy foods at high quantities or sufficient quantities of food, I bet that they would see their power go up a lot, and they might see their weight go up. But I bet that in most cases, they'd actually see a power to weight increase. Like, it would get better in most cases. Mm-hmm. I've absolutely been the person that's tried to run it too close to the line, and like, oh, I can't, I'm just stuck at 310, 315 watts. And that's just my peak. That's what I'll be forever. And really, no, that's not the case. It's just for what I was fueling, that was the limiter, and that was holding me back from being able to improve. But since I've improved my fueling, eating a ton of carbohydrate focused foods that are mostly plant-based and focused on getting a ton of variety and micronutrients and whole grains and vegetables and fruit, getting all of that, then my power goes up when I adequately fuel with that stuff. So I don't know. I wish that it was easy as just Popeyes, breakfast, lunch, and dinner.
It's easy. Trust me. Tom, we're in the same mindset here. Again, you can follow my Instagram, but triathlon, this does not work with triathlon. This does not work with Cape Epic, but for crits, as Pete being my, Pete and a whole bunch of other NorCal riders, Richard Jones being one of them too. The idea, you can be a great flat crit racer and have higher watts per kilo. And you can also be really good rolling road racer, right? It's hard when it gets to be the really long climbs. A 40-minute climb, especially if it's really steep, that's going to be tougher for you. But you actually probably will win more because your power is so much higher, right? Mm-hmm. So you're more like polarized in terms of how you can express your fitness, which is a good thing, I think, rather than being kind of straight down the middle. Mm-hmm. Now, Tom, to do this, you need to be in a caloric surplus to gain weight. And at the same time, you need two things to signal your body. One, you need like some kind of resistance training or aerobic training. And two, you need adequate protein. And for protein, this is how I would think about it, is I would shoot for 2 grams per kilogram of body weight. Yes, that per day. And then carbs, depending on how much you train, maybe 6 grams per kilogram of carbohydrate if you're like 2 hours per day, more if you're doing a little bit more than that. And then fat, probably 1 gram per kilogram body weight. Now, you have that the whole time, and then you need a caloric surplus. So the extra calories can come from whatever you want. And I wouldn't really care too much where you get these from, like which macronutrient. Just do what is good for you, or what is interesting and what you want to eat. Now, at the same time, I would do weightlifting, and I would do try to get your lower body stuff lined up where it's not immediately before a hard day. I actually like it if you did a hard workout in the morning and then an evening leg session. That'd be best. And I would do some upper body training. I don't need science to back this up, but I see it's like, at least in the amateur ranks, you see people who raise their upper body strength and like their whole body gets stronger and their FTP does go up, even though there's no sense in that at all. And
we're not talking turning into Arnold.
Connected.
You're not talking turning into like a bodybuilder upper body strength, right?
No, but the bigger riders, they always have some upper body mass too. Pete, being a good example of that. And maybe you can do this crazy thing where you gain it all in your legs and none in your upper body. That I don't see that in the amateur ranks very often. Maybe at the Cat 1 level, who's kind of like domestic pro. But it's also kind of fun to have some more upper body strength, and it will help probably in sprinting. It helps in mountain biking, long triathlons, a whole bunch of stuff. So that's what I would basically, because you want to, in your caloric surplus, you want to put on muscle, right? And you need to have, like, the most important thing would be to get that protein at 2 grams per kilogram body weight. More than that isn't really going to help. And less than that, you're probably leaving gains on the table. And another way to think about it is if you just kind of do a rule of thumb for protein. So you say, this much chicken is about 20 grams, and you kind of keep that in your head all day. You can use whey protein if you're, or like a pea protein if you're vegan. But if you're vegan, you have to do a little bit more to kind of supplement that. And because it can be hard to get enough meat or protein. I know you get it through other things too, but the easiest for a carnivore or omnivore is to do meat and then some whey protein. And then, you get your carbs on the bike, you get your recovery shake in, and then you just get to eat a little bit of a treat or something else in the other parts of the day. And that's probably a good way. I just don't go too fast. If you go too fast, it's a lot easier to put on a bunch of body fat, which is then probably not what you're aiming for.
Yeah. Alex, this is an interesting question that I wanted to pose to you, because in most cases, most of us are FTP constrained. You are not particularly FTP constrained. So like for me, doing this makes sense because I have room where I can raise my FTP further, right? This sort of a thing. But for you, do you ever toy around with this? Like, do you ever think or do you intentionally put yourself into surpluses to be able to gain more weight, to chase better performance? Or is that how you've gotten to where you are? Because your FTP is ridiculously high. So,
yeah, I kind of take a different approach. I don't actively try to put on weight, and I've definitely been in the boat probably 2 years ago now, last time we raced, 2019, of trying to ride that line of being super light. And I just focused on fueling the work. So I'm sure it's no secret by now. I weigh everything. I track my macros, and as long as I'm hitting those, I barely weigh myself anymore. I used to weigh myself every morning and night, and then maybe sometimes during the day. Wasn't a healthy relationship with that machine. But for now, it's just like, can I hit the numbers? Can I do the workout kind of thing? And now I have this workout twice a week that I'm burning 3,700 calories in 3 hours. I never would have been able to do that at 65 kilos. So it's just making sure that I have the fuel on board and that I know what I need to execute that workout. So for me, it's not necessarily about trying to hit that 500 calorie surplus, but I mean, in our house, we have a cheat meal probably about once a week. And by cheat meal, I mean just whatever we want. I enjoy food a lot, so trust me, I eat plenty of foods. It's just more just something where it's like I've hit my macros for the day, or this will hit my macros for the day in one way or another and go over them, and it's fine. So I've never tried to gain weight, and for Tom, it sounds like he was trying to lose weight. So before going all the way to the other side to trying to gain weight, I would try to first fuel the work and hit those workouts and kind of see where you shake out and kind of go from there.
I've taken this year a different approach for me. I'm not measuring macros at all. I'm just, and what I do is I check in the first week of every month, and I just usually measure for as long throughout that week as I need to be able to make sure that I'm still on track basically with my portions. But basically all I do is I try to make sure that I just stuff myself full of veggies. And if I bring in as many vegetables as possible and starchy carbs and grains, that sort of stuff, if I bring in that and I'm trying to get as much variety as possible, then I'm almost always in a good place, as long as I'm making sure that I'm fueling the work I'm doing on the bike too. And I'm actually the leanest I've been this year, that I've ever been, that I can think of. And that is being done not by not with more attention to detail and more time on the scale and more time measuring macros. It's less of all of that. Instead, it's focusing on quality of food and making sure I'm feeling the work. If I'm doing that, I'm also doing more work than I ever have, just a higher FTP. So it's all going toward me being not only a better athlete, but also I'm just like I feel better in general too. I'm not constantly run down. So this is always like a tricky thing on balances and where people want to do this. But of all things, just make sure you're giving yourself quality whenever you can. And then your body's going to be a lot happier. So
Yeah.
Amber, what is your weight gaining plan?
My weight gaining plan is to make a whole new human being.
But there is like, you need a caloric surplus, right? And I'm guessing you're just going by hunger rather than anything specific.
Yeah, I've actually really just been letting my body take the lead on this one. Believe it or not, I do take my own advice from time to time. So I think after I want to just say one thing. The calibration thing is important. And what I mean by that is, so for example, when I was racing, I thought I had it nailed. I thought I was eating really well. I thought I was feeling well. And then one year I got to be in my bonnet and just said, I want to work with a nutritionist and like really get this dialed in. And the first thing he had me do was hit a protein intake goal for the day. That was one of the first changes we made. And I could not believe how little protein I was eating compared to what he thought I needed. And I couldn't believe how much better I felt when I started eating that. And I couldn't believe how hard it was to get from where I was to where he was recommending. It was it was one change, and you would think that's kind of minor, but it required a substantial change in habits and expectation, but it completely changed how I felt on the bike for the better. But the baseline that I'd become accustomed to, the way that my body was expecting food, the way that I felt on the bike, and the way that my body was using the fuel that I was taking in was vastly different from where it could be. So, and those changes are really hard to make. So I would suggest that make one small change at a time, because even a small change can be really substantial in terms of the effort that goes into building a new habit or replacing one. And it's going to take some experimentation. So let's say you want to increase your protein intake. And I know we're kind of hammering on that, but it's an easy example to use. Different protein sources are going to make you feel very different. So like Nate said, there's going to be, constraints if you're a vegetarian, vegan, or not. And even within those constraints, figuring out what the protein sources and the timing are that are really going to work well for your body, because this is, again, very highly individual. And I would just say that sometimes the signaling that we get is a little bit different. So circling back to what I'm doing now, I really had some time after I stopped racing to allow my body to settle back in and to allow some of those signaling systems to kind of recalibrate and get back online again in a natural way. Because oftentimes we find ourselves like really trying to override those systems, and it can kind of throw them out of whack over time. Mm-hmm. So I feel like I'm in a really good place personally where I can let my body take the lead and really listen to like what my body's asking for, listening, tuning into those satiety cues and those hunger cues. It feels really good. Yeah. And I don't feel like I'm eating that much more than I normally do, but I feel really happy and nourished. And that's all I'm going for right now. It feels good.
That's awesome. I'm so excited. Small Amber.
On the protein side of things too, a little thing that I found was if you're a coffee drinker and an omnivore, I think for collagen, but putting that in your coffee in the morning is an extra 10 grams. So that helps. Yeah. And then
but
like Dave said,
the thing about collagen is there's some muscle building scale, and it goes between 1 and I think 0 and 10, but collagen ranks as a 0. So collagen should not be included in your protein for muscle improvements.
Interesting. Huh.
Yeah.
Interesting. That sounds like something that came from mass, probably, huh?
It did, actually.
Yeah. Stronger by science, guys. Yeah, great.
And then back to TT bikes and power. I have this not backed by science theory that your CDA is pretty set on a bike, right? Like unless you change your fit. So I don't think your CDA is going to change like for 5 to 10 pounds, be in your face, maybe your legs, that belly, maybe. I don't know. But you're going to cut through the air all the same. So if you as a rider are 65 kilos and doing 4 watts per kilo, or 70 kilos doing 4 watts per kilo, I would argue in most situations, or all situations at that point, you'd be going faster, and it would be everywhere. You'd be going faster on the flats, anywhere up to a 7% climb. You're going to be going faster than the same 4 watts per kilo. And then anything above, you'd be at least doing the same. So food for thought.
Definitely depends
That's
on
a
the
good point.
type of racing you're doing.
Yeah.
For Cape Epic, I should just shoot for the moon. 200 pounds, 400 watts. I know all the climbs are more than 7% though, which is kind of annoying, but I will go so fast in the downhills.
What are you going to do about Cape Epic, Nate? It's really not that far away. We're in October. And
John, you're stressing me out, dude.
I'm sorry, but I've got to bring this up. The people are asking for it. Like, what are you going to do? What's the plan?
Oh, jeez. I don't know. I wish we would have raced.
You were fast.
I don't know, January.
You dropped me.
January was the
in
fastest I've
January.
ever been. Yeah, that was the fastest I've ever been. If I get back to that speed, and then I broke my bike, so I need to get that fixed. I need to start training. That's probably good. I know this is a good podcast too, because during it, I was like, what am I going to ride today? Because if we have the podcast and I want to ride during the podcast, then it's a good podcast.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't think I'm going to try to go down to 180 pounds. That does not sound like me right now. The best would be maybe do a little bit more, use Train Now, still try to gain some more muscle mass, and then maybe after 4th of July, go in earnest, try to hit 8 hours per week, but really be diligent. Maybe kind of. Yeah, 4 months and do that. But I mean,
Sounds
it's
super
because
committal.
Yeah.
Maybe kind of.
And then I want to too, which is going to be important to me, is to I don't want to do all this through Sweet Spot on the Trainer. I want to do some longer rides. Luckily, it's going to be the summer. I would like to do some of those Le Mans loops, John, if you are comfortable going slow with me.
Yeah.
Not half wheeling me and talking to me. So that's kind of the idea. There's another thing I'm going to call out. I forgot to mention this before. For the triathlon challenge, I've been thinking about making I have a new house, a small pool there. And I want people to message me with personal experience if they own an endless pool or a swim spot. Not if you've just used it once or you've heard about it. You've owned it for at least a year. What do you think of it? And you're like a triathlete. You've owned it and you've swum in it. So like, would you buy it again? Pretty much. Would you enthusiastically buy it again? That is what I want to know.
I saw it on YouTube once, and I would definitely recommend it.
Thanks, Alex.
And it looks amazing, right? But I don't know.
They look so happy.
Yeah, it's true. You can just swim right there. Nate, I think if you have 4 months to build, and going full circle back to the beginning of this podcast, you have 4 months to get back there. You've spent years of having very consistent training over the past, what has it been, 5-6 years now since you really took your big break before that, when you were focusing on building TrainerRoad, and that was the main priority that took up everything else. So I think that it'll come back faster than or at least faster than perhaps you fear. Maybe you're just confident.
Tahoe,
it'll come
July
back.
12th to August 12th. So training camp, let's go.
There you
Alex will be there with us. It'd be great.
go. It's done.
Training camp, where Zoom is, I can't see anyone right now. Everyone's frozen. It's really slow.
really?
Alex,
no.
what training camp's going on?
Alex,
I'll be in Tahoe for a month, July 12th to August 12th.
There you go.
July 12th. Oh, that's the beginning of it. Oh, cool. Bring your downhill bike and we'll ride together on the road.
We'll just put you on the e-bike with no water bottle cage.
yeah, there we go. All right. Well, thanks everybody for joining us for this episode. And if you have questions for us that you want answered, and they can be anything, whether it's a silly rapid fire question, whether it's an in-depth question about solving a problem that you need to get solved to get faster, do so at trainerroad.com/podcast. You can submit them there. And thanks to everybody that does it all the time. It's so fantastic. You can reach out to all of us hosts on Instagram here, and you can see our handles. It's Alex Wild, MTB, I believe, on Instagram. And then Amber Malika, tr.nate, myself, Lee Jonathan, and of course TrainerRoad, because that's where you're going to get all the content that makes you faster. So follow them there and go and sign up for the Adaptive Training Closed Beta. We're adding people all the time, so you could get added on there. And with that said, we'll talk to you all next week. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone.